Good morning, New Jersey. I am your host, Liz Vaynerchuk Novello, and I'm so excited. Episode 12 is with Andrea Berez, and she's a registered dietitian, but she's also a good friend of mine. So welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you, Liz. I'm
I'm,
so excited to be here.
I'm super excited. First of all, Andrea and I met a few years back, many years back. Our girls went to preschool together and camp, and I'm super excited because I've been seeing a lot more of your social posts, getting back into the field. And so I wanted to have you on today to talk about what is a registered dietitian, how you can help people. So why don't we just get right into it? What is a registered dietitian? Who do they help?
So a registered dietitian is different from a nutritionist. Yes, we are technically called registered dietitian slash nutritionist. However, anybody could actually deem themselves as a nutritionist. You can just simply get a certificate. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a colleague once, this was like years ago, once applied online with her dog's name.
No.
And got for like $50 and got a
Really?
certificate as a nutritionist. Yeah.
So what is the background? How do you become a registered dietitian? How did you do that?
So you go for your bachelor's of science first in dietetics and nutrition. That's your 4-year program. Now actually it's being required to get a master's as well. I think starting in about another year or two, but most people do go on to directly get their master's. You have to also get an internship, so it's a 9-month internship.
Wow.
Which is it's a long process. People don't realize, and the internship. You get a lot of experience in all different areas, clinical areas, community, food service. So
I
I've been
love
in the
that.
kitchen,
Yeah.
in the freezer, on the line, checking trays. And I actually first started working in the hospital for about a year and decided that I did want to obtain my master's. So I worked full time. It took me about 4 years to get my master's. And I love
And
it.
here you are.
Here
And
I am,
so
20
it's
years
so
later.
wow. And so here's something so interesting that I had no idea, because whenever people talk about getting healthy or watching their diets, they always say, I'm going to get a nutritionist. I didn't realize that a registered dietitian is something different. I just want to say good morning to Jenna and Betsy and Brian for always supporting. I'm so excited. My childhood friend, Rob Turnick, is on. Thank you, Robbie, for joining us. So I'm so interested in this area, especially lately. And I think I didn't really get healthy ever in my life. I didn't even understand what healthy food was. When you're raised in a Russian immigrant household, you eat meat and potatoes. And so I was never raised really with any idea of how food affects my body. And so when I couldn't get pregnant, that was the very first time that I was thinking about what I'm actually putting into my body, and how it affects my body. I didn't know that I couldn't get pregnant because I had something called PCOS. And then the more I read about these PCOS diets and things of that sort, I didn't realize how much food actually affects your body, even though I was in my really late 20s. So I think a lot of people have a misconception that, listen, I consider myself a foodie, but food is really there as a source to help you have energy and keep you healthy. And so can you kind of touch base on what your specific area of family, working with families, why you chose that, and what kind of, what are the first things why people reach out to you?
Yeah, of course. I actually became a registered dietitian because my grandmother died of diabetes and heart disease in her early 60s.
Wow.
And it was a big shock. My mom at that point really did become interested in nutrition and started changing our diet. We lowered our red meat consumption, when we all pretty much went on a low-fat diet, more fruits and veggies. And so as a young child, I really became attuned, to what it what it meant to eat healthy. And I actually was a very picky eater myself.
Okay.
So really those two things combined together, really started to spark my interest in nutrition. And it turned out that I really just loved to work with kids. I was a camp counselor for many years. I babysat. I really just loved being with kids. So I decided, after I graduated and I started working, that I really, really, really wanted to specialize in kids, but I couldn't figure out how to get the experience.
Mm,
And I was lucky enough through my master's program to really get that added experience. And I ended up working with the dietitians who really trained me in pediatrics at Robert Wood, and love them still to this day. We're very close. They're great colleagues. And I'm actually back at Rutgers now. I'm teaching
that's
there in their master's program. Yeah.
woohoo!
I
That's
am.
so
I love it. I
exciting.
love it. I love to teach. I love having interns. I have interns that, work with me in my practice. But I really enjoy still to this day working with families and kids. And it's just where my heart is. I am starting to branch out a little bit, but, if I get calls for picky eaters, selective eaters, just general health, weight management, a lot of eating issues and distorted eating behaviors, including eating
Right.
disorders.
Right. It's
So,
so interesting. It's, especially in that adolescence. And I think being so mindful as a mom myself, I'm pretty sure that being a mom changed even how you approach this in a very different way. And, from not using the word diet ever in front of my children, I think that's so important. Building in those foundations. But let's get real, like anything with sugar tastes good. And so a lot of
mhm.
kids just naturally, and adults, including myself, just naturally gravitate towards that. Um, do you find that if you have a foundation of healthy eating, if there's a child that needs support in any way, do you find that within the family, the whole family has to kind of revamp? Like you talked about your mom changing everybody's diet into, less consumption of meat and more vegetables and fruit. Do you find that children, let's say obese children or anybody who comes to you, do you feel like the whole family can use a revamp and re-education on what food does to your body?
Yes, the entire family has to be involved. Everybody has to be a part of changing their eating. It has to be a way of life for the whole
Sure.
family. It's funny, oftentimes I'll get calls and there'll be the sabotager in the family. Oh, it's grandma. She's always bringing over cookies. How am I going to change that? Or, oh my God, my husband, he's always coming home with cake and he just doesn't want to listen. So that's the tough part of it is really changing
What is
everybody's
up with
mindset.
those? Right. What is up with that sabotaging? I think sometimes people do it from love, but
Food
it
is
really,
love.
food is love, right? In so many cultures. Um, so you started with families. You yourself are a mom. What are some things that you learned as a mom that's changed you now as a dietitian?
The day I became a mom changed my entire perspective of feeding and nutrition. I mean, I had already been working with kids a few years, and it just changed it all. It changed it all. I've always said this, that I want to write a book called The Michigas of Feeding. What
I
people
love it.
do to get their kids to eat, it's insane. Chasing their kids around the house. I mean, we're all
Right.
guilty, of putting screens on once in a while.
Sure.
But when it comes mainstream, it's a big problem. Just the behaviors around food and the pressure that parents put on their children to get them to eat is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
do you do you
Go ahead.
feel do you feel that my mom was infamous, not with me because I was never born with the lack of ability to eat, but like my younger brother was almost 8 years younger, and I remember my mom saying, take a bite for Baba, my grandma, take a bite for me, take a bite for Gary. So um and when she sees that I never force my kids to finish a meal, it's such a different way of life from how she grew up and how she raised us, thinking that you have to eat. Like being too thin is like a crime for some parents. Whereas,
Mhm.
my daughter naturally, like I wasn't even born like her. She's naturally thin and petite. and she also gravitates naturally to healthier foods. And so she'll have 2 bites of a donut, and then Max and I are like vultures waiting for her to be done so we could eat the rest, you know? So I think naturally some people gravitate. What do you do? What's the first thing you could do to help families with children that are maybe overeating? I didn't even realize that until I became a mom and spoke to so many moms on these, you know, textures bother children. What are some things that you say if you want to get your children healthy? And let's face it, during this pandemic, my restriction on a lot of foods, or just even having more order, or just working so much, you tend to be like, okay, you can have another snack, just because I didn't have dinner ready at the time that we used to eat dinner every day. So what are some things that families can do to start healthy eating? What's like the first thing you suggest?
Really, the number one thing is, as a parent, you need to be a good role model. You know, if your child is not seeing you touch a fruit or a vegetable or a whole grain, why would you expect them to do that?
Sure.
So, you know, you have to be a good role model. And as you mentioned before, you know, it's also walking a thin line. Like, you really need to be careful about the types of words you use and the conversations
Right.
you have. So, really try to avoid talking about weight. You know, we all have our sticks about eating and our
Right.
weight, but just keep
Yeah,
it away from your kids. So that's
for
number
sure.
one. That's number one. And you know what? Children, from the day that they're born, they have an innate ability to know when they're hungry and when they're full. It's
Hmm.
it's us, you know, as
Right.
caregivers that tend to muck that up. So, you know, provide structure for your kids from day one. You know, sit them down, give them enough time to eat, but just don't force it. Don't force it.
Lemonade wrote, self-discipline with food became much easier for me when I switched my mindset to eat what I like and observe my results as energy returned and adjusted accordingly. It's so interesting. And I think as you
Mhm,
get to become older, you recognize that. And we've talked about this, like even women's health, right? Andrea, like
mhm.
you help families, but women's bodies, I'm assuming men do too, but I noticed that women's body need different things as they age. And I also kind of just want to talk about the tough parts of, you know, yes, there's one spectrum of the obesity and helping children kind of maintain healthy weights, but then there's the other scary side of eating disorders.
Mhm.
So how do you help families that have some of those challenges? Where do you see eating disorders on a level from when you started, you know, 20 years ago to now? Like, is it getting better? Are women, are, and boys, right? Boys and girls both can have eating disorders. Are you seeing an improvement in eating disorders, or are you continuing to see the normal, what you've seen prior, or decline of children facing these issues?
Well, you know, fortunately and unfortunately, I'll talk about fortunate. The fortunate fact is that there has been a tremendous improvement, you know, in how we treat eating disorders, both in children and adults. Um, Really, just a lot more services that are available these days, and are, you know, more recognized. So, a lot of treatment programs, therapists, dietitians, you know, who are there, you know, to help. So that's the fortunate part, is that the services are available. You know, the unfortunate part is that it's not going away anytime soon. You
Mm.
know, it's unfortunately, you know, with the pressure on these kids, with society, the pressure to look good, to be thin, and unfortunately, again, the anxiety that kids face these days
Mm.
and the peer pressure, it's not going away.
It's
It's
so
not going
interesting.
away.
I'm starting to see so many more ads of women of different sizes. From, you know, J. Crew has been doing that. Madewell, they're the same company, but you know, I find that to be amazing because I think it's so important to show that everybody comes in different shapes and sizes. But what's most important, not everybody's built to be thin, 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 right? Like some people are just naturally thicker, and I think the important part is finding out what's healthy for your body.
That's right. It's called the health at every size approach. It's been a huge movement, I want to say, in the past 10 years. And it's really, really been just wonderful in terms of, how they've advertised, through these different
Mhm.
companies.
Mhm.
And many dietitians just take that approach. You
Right.
can be thin and be unhealthy. Being
Correct.
thin does not equate with being healthy. You can be thin and have high cholesterol. You can be a little bit overweight, above what they say your BMI should be,
Right.
and be perfectly healthy. So no, it
Right.
doesn't, weight doesn't tell it all.
Right. And so what are some of your, like, it's so great because as soon as you came on, I said, oh, I'm starting to use that omega fish oil with my own kids. I'm about to
Mhm.
sneeze. Excuse me,
Bless you.
everybody. Thank you. Um, excuse me. Can you speak on fish oil? I just started it because I had read that it helps with eczema. And so my daughter, like, randomly kind of battles some eczema issues. And we just learned that she has some gluten sensitivity. So
Okay.
they say eczema usually, am I correct? They say eczema usually is a sign of a imbalance inside your body, right? Like from kind of food sensitivities.
Yes,
That's
yes.
that's the same brand Melissa Sawyer, my good friend, uses. So I love this omega-3 because my kids actually think it tastes really great. And can you share a little bit what you can do with omega-3? My kids actually take it straight to the face, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's other ways to do it.
I love omega-3, and it's used, right now. We have so much research on the benefits. And it's anti-inflammatory, but it's so great for your heart health, and it's so great for your brain health. So,
Who
um,
should be using it? Everybody?
everybody, really
Okay.
everybody,
Do you
everybody. I
use
do
it?
have a
Do you?
try. Well, I use it,
Yep.
once in a while. I mean, I do tend to eat a lot of salmon, but I will sometimes, supplement that. I have a daughter who has ADHD, so I give this to her.
Why do they
As
say
well.
I read that too. Why do they say
Mhm.
it helps with ADHD?
Really helps with focus. Really
Really?
helps.
Have you
Yep.
noticed a difference?
I have. It does take about 3 to 4 months to see the effects,
Okay.
but and I have other things here, that
Share.
just wanted to, I really am big into adding things to food supplement with
Show me.
really
I
high
want to know
quality
everything.
food. So this
Yep.
is flax meal, pumpkin seeds. These are all naturally high in omega, hemp seeds. So I actually did a cooking class last week that was really fun, where we made these little energy bites and this delicious hummus, and it had all these great foods in them. So, I mean,
So
you
these
don't
are
necessarily have to take a supplement, if you can get it in your diet. It's just, you have to be kind of consistent about it.
what are some ways you can get that omega-3 in your children if they don't want to take it by the spoonful?
Yeah, yeah. So, of course, fish is great, salmon if your kids love salmon. But again, some of these foods, flax, chia, hemp, adding that to smoothies, adding it to yogurt, oatmeal, you can bake with it. There's a lot that you can do with these foods, and they taste good. Actually, they have no flavor really, so you
Right.
can't even tell the difference.
So what's a typical idea or structure that you have? Like just when I became a mom, it was very much a routine for my kids to have 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, like at 10 o'clock and after school. Is that still, when you help a family with trying to get healthier, is that kind of the schedule that you run, or are you like, okay, add more fruits and vegetables to each meal? What's an easy way to start for anybody who has a family that's struggling to be healthy right now?
I always recommend to have that structure, Liz, no matter how old you are, because we have to keep ahead of our hunger.
Yes.
We have to keep, and kids can get very hangry, right?
Yes. And adults. I get
Yes,
hangry.
and
I get
adults,
hangry.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And from the time the kids are so little, 18 months, 2 years old, they know what's going on, and they know, to when they're, if you keep structure going with their meals, then they know, when to expect to eat as well. So they're not constantly begging you, for snacks all day long. If they know, snack time is 10 o'clock and lunchtime is noon.
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Right. So, it's so interesting. You said you got to stay ahead of your hunger. And I myself can just have coffee and then at 2 o'clock I'm starving and you just
Hmm.
start eating everything. But I notice that when I'm trying to maybe lose some weight, I refocus on having meals, sitting down, actually enjoying getting more protein in. So definitely that's an interesting point that even for children, they're humans too, and you need to get ahead of their hunger. What are some snacks that you suggest for families that are struggling?
Anything that has some other protein, that has protein is great. So I love, like, we always keep dried chickpeas and soy nuts, hummus, with whole
Mhm.
grain,
I
chips
love
or
hummus.
crackers. Yeah, yeah, or
Yeah,
veggies, that's great. Any kind of, I know that a lot of kids have allergies these days, but any kind of nut butter, seed butter, if you're allergic to tree nuts, or peanuts, you can have some butter, you can have soy butter. Those are all really yummy things. You can put them in smoothies. You can put them on crackers, have it with fruit. Smoothies are great, by the way.
I love smoothies. If
Yeah,
someone
my
makes
my
them for
daughter is
me,
making her own now. She just pulls out the Vitamix and like pours in some milk,
that's
some yogurt, some fruit,
fantastic.
and goes. So even 6, 7, 8 year olds can make their own
Wow.
smoothies now. Yeah.
Tell me some areas like I know it's such a big gamut of things that you help families with. What's kind of a highlight for you where you feel good? What's been a story or a success for you personally when you see changes in a family? Do you have any successful stories that just keep pushing you to do what you're doing?
I absolutely do. And really, being in private practice, I've been doing this now for almost 6.5, 7 years. It has just given me so much happiness, pride, like nachas, right?
Yeah.
As we say,
Yeah.
because I really get to know these kids, know these families, spend time with them. I have worked with families for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Right.
And those that really stay with me, stick with me, and are in for the long haul, no, they see that they can change their behavior, and that's really what it comes down to. Is
Behavior.
we're behavior.
Wow.
You're not going to see anything change in a week or two,
Right.
but I definitely have seen families change a lot of behaviors. All start to exercise together, sit down at meal times. Um, have structured, snacks, plan their meals ahead. That's so huge
Planning is so
planning. Yeah.
important, and I feel like families, children and parents are busier than ever, right?
Hmm.
Right now we've spent a long time with our families, so um, I think the planning ahead is so important. So what exactly do people, when they come to you, what is something or what are the things you do? Do you plan for them? What's the day one look like with you?
Well, I always, 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 number one, just get to know them and their schedule, what they like and what they don't like. Because if I don't make it personalized and I'm not individualizing a plan, forget it. Just forget it, right? It's like if somebody told me, like I have to eat at these specific times because that's when
Sure.
they eat, or I have to avoid these foods because that doesn't, work for them. Well, what about what works for me? But planning is so key. And you know what I tell parents? Make cooking, make planning an activity with your kids. Take them to the supermarket, help them pick out some items, have them cook with you, have them prepare their snacks with you, have them look at food labels,
Definitely.
and it's
I've
spending time
never
with your
made them look
kids.
at food labels, but something I'd like to do is ask them specifically to my 11-year-old growing boy, what is something healthy he wants to eat this week? Trying to see what he can challenge himself with.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating to me, and I always bring it back to what I know, which is motherhood, right?
Hmm.
It's so fascinating that my son never had a texture issue. Can you develop texture issues later in life? Like now he doesn't like slimy bananas. And like if you can feel the chunk in the smoothie has to be like really grinded up. Can you
Hmm.
develop texture issues as you get older, or were they always there and I had no idea?
mean, they probably were kind of insidious, maybe. I mean, listen, kids don't go through their like food jags, where they kind of get hooked on certain things and they get tired of them. So that could be a part of it too. Maybe it's just like kind of tired of that
Yeah,
texture and you just want something different.
right.
Yeah.
And so, what are some things that you could suggest for anybody who just found out that they had an allergy? I think any parent who's dealing, I was sharing before that my daughter has now, we think or suspect a gluten
Hmm.
sensitivity, and just cutting it a little bit really
Hmm.
substantially helped. Do a lot of people come to you when they find out their child has a food allergy? Because I can't believe how much products have gluten, or I'm sure any parent that's dealing with allergies of any kind,
Hmm.
like even being lactose intolerant. What can you share with the viewers on all that?
Hmm. Well, you have to know, your food labels and what to look out for sure, especially if you have celiac disease or a gluten allergy. I mean, thankfully that, the industry has boomed. So there
Mm,
are so many more products out
for
there
sure.
that are allergy free. I always tell people like walk down the natural foods aisle. Most people, they really kind of try to take a stab at this on their own, and generally they may do okay. Usually they call me, when the child is either extremely picky or has a texture issue on top of it all, or just as a terrible eater. And how are we going to get their nutrition up, and how are we going to supplement them? What are we going to do to really help their diet to make them healthy? So yeah, you can do it on your own, but as dietitians, we're always here to help. Always here to help.
Um, my brother just wrote, "Good morning, Sissy. I'll tell you something that Gary and I used to do that was super unhealthy. My mom's probably going to not love this, but we would go to the supermarket and we were allowed to probably pick out two items. So literally from like Blanco or ShopRite, I don't even want to tell you, Andrea, we ate like a whole box of Twix in like 15 minutes. I'm not a whole box. Don't
Liz,
tell
it's
them.
easy for anybody to do.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Andrea, we stuffed a whole
Sorry.
box. We stuffed a whole box. Our mom might have helped them as well. But we were horrible. And, we definitely did not grow up with healthy eating. My mom dominated on everything else, but the Twix had no chance.
Well,
We
we were never
destroyed it.
restrictive in our house. Yeah, you destroyed it. That's funny. I mean, we
You,
were
you
never
know,
restrictive. I mean, we always, we still had some junk food around, but that's the key thing is you don't
what
want to be
is
too restrictive
your
with your kids.
What does your pantry look like, Andrea? Do you have lots of junk food, or is everything really health conscious?
Well,
What's
my
the
friends
worst
and my
thing?
husband would joke like, "Oh, I'm a dietitian, but I have junk food." You know what? I have it all. I have it all.
What?
And I find that my kids, they don't binge, they don't
Right,
overdo it because it's there when they want it.
right.
But the healthy stuff is there too. So,
Do you
we
feel
get a
that?
combination.
Do you feel that binging happens when there's restriction?
It absolutely does. It absolutely
Okay.
does. I see it all the time. I hear it all the time. I observe it. I've seen kids at parties just stand there and, eat
Are
the
you
whole
sure you're
bowl of
not
chips.
talking about me,
No, I'm
Andrea,
not
at
talking
parties?
about you,
Kidding.
Liz.
Um, I'm not trying to make light of it. I think this is a really interesting topic. Where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Google. If you search my name, my company is called New Jersey Pediatric and Family Nutrition, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on all social media pretty much. I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram. So
And
easy to
Andrea,
find me.
let's talk Jersey for the last few minutes. Bring it back to Good Morning Jersey. You're born and raised Springfield, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right near Wine Library. Everybody. She grew up in the
Yep.
town, so I kind of very familiar with all those streets. What is the best food health store that you like to visit here in Jersey?
I love Trader Joe's. I mean, I'm there at least
People
once a
are
week.
huge. I know I'm going to get like so much.
It's just the prices are so reasonable. That's what it
That
comes
is
down to.
true. I'm gonna get
Good prices.
demolished here. I don't know why. I just am not like I've tried it. I can't get into it. Locally to us, Andrea's I don't know if you want to share where you live, but we live in between the same towns, and I
Mm-hmm.
visit Dean's Food Market
Beans
where
is
I
great
find,
too.
but I bet you their prices are not as good as Trader Joe's. What's your favorite Jersey diner? I mean, if you're from Jersey,
I mean,
you've
I
gone
grew
to the
up
diner.
going to Union Plaza Diner all the
Hmm.
time. And, it depends on where I am, but I do
That's
love,
right.
yes, of
I
course I love
think,
a good omelet at a diner.
right. I
I
think
never pass
every Jersey person has spent, a late evening at a diner,
that.
right?
Yes, 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 yes.
What's your favorite activity to do in Jersey?
Go to the beach.
What's your
I
favorite beach?
dream about it.
Well,
My family loves to go to Bradley Beach and also LBI, depending on which
yep,
family I'm with.
got
And
it.
also love Wildwood. I love Cape May. When I was doing my internship at college, I was away at University of Wisconsin. Somebody took me to a lake, and I called my mom when I got home. I go, Mom, this is not a beach. When am I
This
going
is
to get home to go to the beach?
Guys, we have
Going to
good
the beach.
beaches. We have good beaches.
Hmm.
And what is something that you want to share with the audience that you think maybe we didn't touch upon?
Well, we talked about a lot of things. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on. But I just want to let everybody know that, if you're feeling lost, you're feeling stressed, something is going on in your family that's involving food, behaviors, call me. I will help you. I am your voice of reason and I will help you.
Guys, reach out to Andrea with any questions. She's always available, even just for a quick phone conversation. She's there to help. I hope you all have an amazing Saturday. It's a gorgeous day here in Jersey. And be well, guys. Thanks, Andrea, for joining us.
Thank you, Liz, for having me on today.
Of
Bye,
course. Bye,
everybody.
guys.